Hey YouTubers, this is the Gold Standard Caesar 924 coming at you with my review for WrestleMania 33. Now I am aware that this pay-per-view aired just about a week ago, and I just haven't really gotten an opportunity to make a in-depth discussion video considering my thoughts on it. And surprisingly enough, I actually really enjoyed this pay-per-view. I look at the card on paper and there wasn't really that one match where I kind of felt like I really need to go out my way and watch it. And I still had a bit of optimism that the show would deliver given the amount of talent that's competing at this very pay per view event. So I wasn't completely concerned or had some sort of lack of confidence that this pay per view wouldn't do so well for me. But surprisingly enough, I was genuinely impressed by this pay per view. Now, I do have a bit of a problem when it comes to these ridiculous 7 long hours, especially for this pay per view, but as well as like WWE's Big Four pay per views. I don't think I even brought up this discussion even months prior with Royal Rumble and Survivor Series this past year and how ridiculously long and dragged out that these pay per views have been in recent years. But I really think that this WrestleMania, for instance, like I said, I'm just very flattered by the presentation of the show and some of the matches that were featured on the show. So I don't want to drag on too long and just basically gonna go into detail regarding some of my one of my thoughts regarding these matches, excuse me. Now, I don't necessarily count the pre-show matches like I've been addressing in my past pay-per-view reviews. I don't really talk about the kickoff matches as far as in-depth analysis are concerned. But you do have three matches on the kickoff show, which was the Cruiserweight title bout between Adrian Neville and Austin Aries. You have Dean Ambrose defending the Intercontinental title against Baron Corbin, and the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, which Mojo Rawley ended up winning this year. Ambrose and Neville retained their respective championship belts. So, other than the special guest appearance from one of the players of the New England Patriots, I believe his name was Rob Gronkowski, if I'm not mistaken. Other than that, there wasn't really a whole lot that I would really want to talk about as far as kickoff show is concerned. But I might as well just dive into the main card. And this pay-per-view opened up with a match consisting of AJ Styles and Shane McMahon. And I was very impressed by this match. Surprisingly, it didn't drag on as much as I thought it was. I definitely thought this was Shane McMahon's best performance in recent memory. Definitely thought this was a step up from last year's Hell in a Cell match. I mean, yeah, that match was given a lot of time, but given so much time, it just got to the point where it just felt like, man, do we really need to see a 50-year-old middle-aged man try to pull off a stunt like jumping off the top of the Hell in a Cell? And that's kind of what I was asking myself looking back. But this match was it was shorter compared to last year's, but still very fun and did its job. I mean, even with AJ Styles and Shane McMahon, it's like you really think that AJ Styles would be put in a better profile match, but I didn't really necessarily complain too much about it. I mean, I'm sure they were gonna tear the house down somehow, some way. So I didn't think it was gonna be a letdown, even despite on paper it's not like a match that you would really pay a ton of money to watch. But definitely really enjoyed the opening match. I mean, Shane McMahon sold that baseball slide like crazy. I remember he flipped over the announce table, and then AJ Styles tried to go for a phenomenal forearm during that springboard, and then Shane McMahon at the last moment reversed it into what I believe looked like the Gogo Plata, or the MMA submission move that The Undertaker does, which is the Hell's Gate. So it kind of reminds me of that move, even though the announcers never made mention about it, which is ironic since Shane McMahon did wrestle The Undertaker the previous year. But yeah, just a very good mix of mat-based wrestling that picks up later on, and we even see a ref bump, so this kind of leads to more emphasis on spots and the use of weapons. So you couldn't really escape a Shane McMahon match without including weapons, since that's been kind of like a staple when it comes to some of the marquee matches that Shane McMahon has been in over the years. And, Shane McMahon did a shooting star press, which kind of surprised me since he hasn't done that move in a long time. But unfortunately, he wasn't able to connect with the move, and AJ Styles moved out of the way. So AJ Styles ended up finding a way to defeat Shane McMahon in the opening bout. And like I said, I was just very impressed by this match. I was very shocked that Shane McMahon didn't do a high spot. Remember tweeting on Twitter, like just in the minutes leading into the beginning of WrestleMania, where I jokingly thought about Shane McMahon climbing up the Universal Studios light globe during the WrestleMania stadium. Like the ref bump happens just as it unfolded. Then Shane and AJ would like brawl over the stadium. So Shane McMahon would pull such a risk and perform some sort of aerial attack from the globe. But that didn't happen. And maybe on the bright side, I'm glad that it didn't happen, so we don't have to risk seeing another attempt at Shane McMahon doing some ridiculous spot just for the sake of making this match even memorable. But I mean, this match was still fine for what it was. I mean, I know it might sound a little negative in some areas, but definitely really enjoyed this match, like I said, and the right guy went over, so AJ Styles picked up the victory there. Then we have is the United States Championship up for grabs. Chris Jericho defending the belt against Kevin Owens. And we basically know the whole story. Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens, they've been a unit since this past summer around the time of the resurgence of the brand extension. And they've been kind of doing each other their favors, go for this, go for that. Jericho being the main reason why Kevin Owens had been the Universal Champion for such a long time. And then we get to the weeks leading into Fastlane around the Las Vegas episode of Raw. They did a segment where they were awarding each other with these gifts and thanking each other for the kind friendship that they've had and just really celebrating the months that they've been together as a unit. And Kevin Owens awards Chris Jericho with a clipboard of the list, which has been a staple for Chris Jericho. He's been kind of writing down wrestlers' names and all these sorts of tropes that would happen if things just didn't go his way. Proves them at a disadvantage, then Chris Jericho would just get his clipboard out with a ballpoint pen or a pencil, and he would just jot down the names like, you just made the list, and insert name here. So Kevin Owens turns on Chris Jericho when he finds out that his name is on the Kevin Owens list as opposed to the Chris Jericho list like we all thought. And Kevin Owens turned on Chris Jericho during that segment. And then we get to Fastlane. Kevin Owens scheduled to face Goldberg. And then Chris Jericho's music hits. Kevin Owens gets distracted. Goldberg spear, jackhammer to become the new Universal Champion. Kevin Owens gets infuriated. He attacks Jericho in the weeks leading into WrestleMania. This match I enjoyed. I wouldn't say I enjoyed it as much as AJ Styles and Shane, but they still did its job. One of the matches I actually thought that was going to sound good on paper. I think I might have said it like earlier in the video that there wasn't one match where I felt like I would go out my way to watch. Turns out that there actually is one match, and this is the one that I'm discussing about at the moment. Now, this was a mat-based wrestling match and starts to pick up. Kevin Owens tried to go for a pump-up powerbomb, and then Chris Jericho at the last moment counters into a code breaker, which I thought looked pretty cool. Kevin Owens also tried to mock Chris Jericho by locking in the walls of Jericho on Chris Jericho himself. And even Chris Jericho ended up retaliating by showing Kevin Owens how it's done when he countered the cannonball into the walls. And the match ended when Kevin Owens nails Chris Jericho with the powerbomb to the apron and then rolls him back in, gets the 3 count, and becomes the new United States champion. So I definitely really enjoyed this match. And it's kind of ironic considering the fact that even though this is for the US title, Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho aren't necessarily from the United States and they're actually from Canada. So that kind of had me scratching my head and even laughed a little bit. It's like, why are they fighting for a belt that isn't representing their own country? But nevertheless, this was definitely a very fun match. Then we get to a Fatal 4-Way elimination, and this involves the Raw Women's Championship. Bayley defending the belt against Sasha Banks, Charlotte Flair, and Nia Jax. Now this match I wasn't necessarily too crazy compared to the first 2 matches. I mean, the eliminations were pretty rushed. Nia Jax was the first one eliminated. Although that caught me off guard when Bayley and Sasha, Charlotte were doing the Shield triple powerbomb. And, they both simultaneously pinned Nia Jax to be the first one eliminated. So, I was kind of thinking that they probably should have done Bayley and Sasha Banks and to really capitalize on a potential direction for Sasha Banks to turn on Bayley, and that she was using Bayley as a way to go after the Raw Women's title, especially with Charlotte Flair being taken out of the picture. But I can understand that they wanted to keep Charlotte since they presented her as the number 1 female wrestler in the women's division. So it was pretty logical to put her on the show without having to leave her out completely. So I can understand why she was involved in this match. And Nia Jax has been consistently looking strong since she got called up to the main roster. I mean, she has yet to grow on me. She hasn't really had any sort of traits that really wants me to think that, maybe she does have a chance to really prove and pay her dues and potentially be a viable challenger for the women's title. But the match was given a reasonable amount of time, not necessarily too long per se, but Bayley ended up retaining the women's title here. And I really thought that they could have had Charlotte just kept the belt all the way to WrestleMania and then have Bayley win it there just to have a WrestleMania moment. And up until this point, there hasn't really been a lot of title changes, at least until we get to the next match, which is a Fatal 4-Way ladder match for the Raw Tag Team title belts, with the Bullet Club defending against Sheamus and Cesaro, Enzo and Cass, and I would say that this was actually a triple threat ladder match initially until New Day came out there and announced that they called an audible that this was going to be a Fatal 4-Way ladder match. And it looked like the New Day were going to be the contenders involved in this tag team title bout. And they were the hosts for WrestleMania that night, so you would think they would utilize their power to insert themselves into any match that they wish. But it turns out that it wasn't the case, and they kind of swerved the audience, announcing that, or at least giving an implication that it would still be a Fatal 4-Way match, but there would also be another tag team that isn't the New Day. And it turns out that the instant the familiar theme song hits, the Hardy Boys come out to a really huge pop, standing ovation. Matt and Jeff, they make their returns to the WWE in nearly over a decade. And they basically take it from there. This would be the first in 16 years that a tag team match at WrestleMania would be a ladder match in some form. Now, WrestleMania 17 was a TLC match, but it was still implemented under ladder match rules, so it was just basically the same as a ladder match, just with tables and chairs. So this was definitely a very fun match. I mean, it wasn't going to be like an all-time great like the original TLC matches or the original ladder matches that consisted of the Hardys, Edge and Christian, and the Dudleys. But for what it did its job in really showcasing all 4 teams, and particularly the Hardys. And they ended up going over here and became the new Raw Tag Team Champions. So I think that was pretty much the right call. I mean, if you're going to bring a tag team back or a wrestler back, especially if it was going to be involved in a championship match, then logically you would have the tag team or wrestler returning to go on to win that particular championship belt. So I thought they actually made that right move in having the Hardys go over and really show that they could still go. I mean, they've been wrestling like in TNA and ROH. They've been keeping themselves occupied, even though they weren't in the company for nearly over a decade. Really made a great WrestleMania moment there. So definitely really enjoyed this match. Now we get to the non-sanctioned match between Seth Rollins and Triple H. I guess you could say this is sort of like 3 years in the making of sorts, because this kind of goes back to when Seth Rollins betrayed Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose, when they were part of the Shield. So that's when he was taken in by Triple H to be their architect, quote unquote. And then at some point in late 2015, Seth Rollins got injured. He was the WWE champion, so he had to vacate the belt. Came back in 2016 that summer, tried to go after the title belt that he never lost, but he came up. He actually won it, and then he came up short when Dean Ambrose cashed it in on Seth Rollins. So that was kind of ill-fated. So Seth Rollins, he tried to go after the Universal title, came up short again. I believe they put him in a four-way elimination match on Raw since Finn Balor had to vacate the belt due to an injury as well. And then Triple H turns on Seth Rollins, interferes in the match. And we haven't really heard so much about Triple H in the next couple months until that infamous segment during NXT TakeOver in Toronto. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Toronto, the night before Survivor Series, and then Seth Rollins trying to call out Triple H and demanding a match with him. But Triple H has been kind of ducking him for the past several months, and then this kind of culminates into this match that we have here at WrestleMania. Now, this match was it's kind of a mixed bag for some wrestling fans. Some people liked it, some people thought that the match was too slow, that it took a little while for it to get going. I mean, even Stone Cold Steve Austin mentioned in his podcast he wasn't really fond of how the match was being paced. I guess I could talk about the entrances, like with Triple H riding on a police motorcycle, like he was American Badass Undertaker, and he was riding with Stephanie. And then Seth Rollins came out there, he lit up a torch. I don't know, but those were the things I kind of remembered. I think Triple H's entrances are kind of, very weird as well. I mean, I wasn't very fond of the Terminator entrance that he had at WrestleMania 31. Last year, I guess it wasn't too bad, but still not something that really strikes out to me as interesting, I guess you could say. But this year, that's really the best answer I could give to you guys. But nevertheless, as far as my opinion on the no holds barred, non-sanctioned match, however you want to call it, but the match wasn't actually that bad. Yes, it did indeed start off pretty slow in some areas. Triple H working on Seth Rollins' leg. Yeah, because this was around mid-February when Samoa Joe debuted on the main roster. He tried to apply Seth Rollins with the Coquina clutch, and then at some point Seth Rollins tore his knee once again. So he had to get called out. I'm pretty sure that he was supposed to face Samoa Joe at Fastlane, but because of that incident, that match never materialized. And, we're going to definitely see a Rollins and Samoa Joe match down the road eventually. Despite that, Seth Rollins continued to wrestle, and they kind of insert that into a storyline where Triple H has been constantly attacking Seth Rollins, especially going out his way to injure his located knee. Triple H nails Seth Rollins from behind with the crutch onto the injured knee. And then that's kind of how the build-up, especially the last couple of weeks of WrestleMania. So Triple H tries to do all he can to wear down Seth Rollins' knee. But luckily, Seth Rollins managed to make a comeback. There was actually a spot towards the end where Seth Rollins shoves Triple H and knocks Stephanie off the apron, crash landing onto a table. Triple H is shocked and all, and this allows Seth Rollins to nail the pedigree on Triple H to defeat Triple H in that match. So this match I enjoyed in some ways. I didn't enjoy it like that much, but I thought it was actually a pretty good match, and that's why I haven't really said it was all time great because of just the slow pacing that the match had in the earlier minutes. Then we have is the WWE title bout between Bray Wyatt defending the belt against Randy Orton. So Randy Orton won the 2017 Royal Rumble. Bray Wyatt ended up winning the WWE title at the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view. So this kind of culminates into a match for the WWE title. This match I was pretty disappointed with. I mean, other than those digital holograms that were there, like when Orton and Bray Wyatt were wrestling, there was like worms. They utilized a lot of digital technology throughout the WrestleMania aisle and on the ring canvas, so they would show like these digital holographic images of Bray Wyatt and just doing all he can to play these sorts of mind games. I think it was Bray Wyatt or Randy Orton. But other than that, this match was very, very forgettable. It kind of really felt sort of like an intermission type of match, or a match just kind of because people were just completely burnt out of the Seth Rollins Triple H match, which was given a lot of time, if I remembered. But Randy Orton ended up defeating Bray Wyatt to become the new WWE champion. So I think a lot of people saw that coming. But I never really got that moment where it felt like, oh man, Randy Orton won the WWE title. It's like, yes! I didn't really get that. It was like Randy Orton, RKO, and he took his time to get the pinfall, and then referee counts in a regular 3 count. And it was like, yay, Randy Orton won. It's like, okay. And that's kind of what I felt. It's like, wait, that's it? But yeah, this match I kind of felt a little let down on. But I definitely knew who was going to go over, and I was a little disappointed Bray Wyatt didn't get his moment. I mean, he's been losing a lot of WrestleMania matches. He hasn't even won a single WrestleMania match. I mean, he's fought John Cena, he's fought Undertaker. I can't remember last. I don't think he wrestled last year. I think he was in a segment. Yeah, he was in a segment with The Rock and John Cena, and then like there was like this match where Rock squashes Eric Rowan out of all people in less than 10 seconds. But yeah, I honestly don't. I don't think he even wrestled last year. But yeah, Bray Wyatt came up short against Randy Orton. Orton is the new WWE champion. So I was pretty disappointed by it. I believe we also have the Universal Championship belt up for grabs with Brock Lesnar and Goldberg. This is just about 13 years after their original WrestleMania 20 encounter, and we all know how that turned out. But yeah, this match, I mean, this was like every other Goldberg-Lesnar match that has happened, especially at Survivor Series, where Goldberg just demolishes Brock Lesnar in, I want to say 22 seconds. And then we have the rematch here. They had a bit of a stare down at the Royal Rumble, but neither of those wrestlers won. But we do have the penultimate match here at WrestleMania. Goldberg's coming in as the Universal Champion. He defends it against Brock Lesnar. And Brock Lesnar taking his opportunity, taking his time to utilize the strategy. It looked like Goldberg was going to demolish Brock Lesnar for a moment. And spear, jackhammer. Brock Lesnar kicks out of the jackhammer. I mean, Goldberg tried to go for a spear. Brock Lesnar moves out of the way. Brock German suplexes Goldberg and demolishes him once more with the F5 to get his win back. So after 2 matches of Goldberg just diminishing Brock Lesnar finally gets that big win over Goldberg and becomes the new Universal Champion. So yeah, this match was kind of what people expected. It wasn't going to go on for long, but definitely was really on the edge of my seat. I mean, the crowd really helped it as well. And Brock Lesnar walking out there and devising a strategy. I mean, I would think Paul Heyman was going to like interfere and do some cheap underhand tactics of some sort, like maybe distracting the referee or handing Brock Lesnar with a weapon, but that wasn't the case. Brock Lesnar defeats Goldberg fair and square in the middle of the ring and walks out of the match as the new Universal Champion. Yeah, definitely really enjoyed it, even if it was only less than 5 minutes, but definitely makes up for their 15 to 20 minute match that they had at WrestleMania 20. So there you go at that. Then we have a six-pack challenge for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Alexa Bliss going in as the champion. She defends the belt against Naomi, Becky Lynch, Natalya, Carmella, and Mickie James. Now, originally this match was going to be on the kickoff show, and then at some point at the last minute that they started reshuffling the card, and I believe Dean Ambrose and Baron Corbin for the Intercontinental title was supposed to be on the main card, and then they flipped that around, so the IC title match was on the pre-show, and the SmackDown Women's title match gets moved from the kickoff to the main card of the show. Now, this match wasn't really given a whole lot of time because this was just coming off the heels of a 2 or 3 marquee matches, and this six-pack challenge was kind of used as sort of a intermission match of sorts. Kind of reminds me of those old days of the late 2000s when WWE would always put the Divas matches in one of the worst spots on the card. But, I mean, for what it was, this match wasn't all that bad. I mean, these 6 wrestlers were pretty solid workers. Naomi was supposed to be the women's champ. She was going to carry that belt into her hometown, but then at some point she got injured. So they had to, as opposed to vacating the belt, she loses it back to Alexa Bliss on SmackDown, and then she manages to, we weren't really sure if Naomi was going to compete, but on the go-home show, it turns out that she's 100% ready to go. So we have the six-pack challenge here. They did all they could. Natalya did a double-leg sharpshooter. I can't remember who she locked it in. I can't remember exactly who Natalya locked the 2 sharpshooters on, but I thought that was a pretty cool spot. But yeah, so this match was, it was very fast-paced, so they obviously weren't going to give a lot of time. And Alexa Bliss ends up tapping to Naomi with the Anaconda Vice for Naomi to win back her women's championship. I was actually pretty shocked when Naomi locked in that Anaconda Vice. I was afraid the crowd would chant CM Punk, considering he used to do the Anaconda Vice. But it was a pretty okay match. I mean, if it went longer than it did, then it probably would have been I would probably rank it as a really good match. Maybe like, I don't know if I want to give a star rating because I don't normally give star ratings like most wrestling reviewers do, but I guess I could say I would have given it 3 stars, but since this wasn't given a lot of time, I'm going to give it like 2.25. I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I mean, because these were solid workers, so I mean, it's definitely a time waster, but it's not like a clusterfuck of a match, despite the fact that this was just a multi-diva match or multi-woman match, however you want to put it. But overall, I mean, it did its job. I mean, nothing to really complain about, but Naomi ends up winning back her women's championship. And now we get to the main event. And I was very nervous, like many other wrestling fans that were anxious to see how this was all going to play out and whether or not this was going to really close out the show. And this match I'm talking about is The Undertaker versus Roman Reigns. What happens at the Royal Rumble, Undertaker was number 28 or 29, and people were expecting number 30 to be some sort of mystery opponent, like a returning wrestler like Finn Balor or a debuting Samoa Joe. But what we got at number 30 was none other than the guy that got his ass beat earlier that night for the Universal title. And then Roman Reigns' music hits, crowd boos. I mean, everyone thought Roman Reigns was going to win that match. He even goes as far as eliminating The Undertaker and telling Undertaker that this was his yard. But Roman Reigns didn't win the Royal Rumble. Randy Orton did. So they kind of ignored it for a little bit. And then they brought the subject back up after Fastlane. And, Roman Reigns and Taker, they were just basically going at each other's throats with these promos and telling Undertaker that this is his yard and that this isn't, that your time is up, my time is now. I mean, not to quote a John Cena reference. Actually, I missed the mixed tag team bout, but I'm going to get to that a little bit. Oh, Roman Reigns and Undertaker. It was actually a pretty sloppy match. I mean, it was kind of sad in some ways because we were kind of like Undertaker didn't really feel as mobile compared to previous years where he wrestled, and it really showed. So Roman Reigns pretty much dominated most of this match. Undertaker had his fair share of offense, but Roman Reigns was the one carrying this match. And I mentioned that it was botchy because there was an instance where Undertaker tried to go for a tombstone. Roman Reigns reversed it. Looks like he was going to counter it with a tombstone of his own, but he ended up slipping and he wasn't able to lock it in, so Roman Reigns had to improvise and even nails the Superman punch on The Undertaker. It took multiple attempts to wear out The Undertaker. Roman Reigns used a couple of chair shots, and then Roman just kind of bounced back and forth between the ropes. Undertaker didn't know where he was going. Roman Reigns nails the spear. 1, 2, 3. Roman Reigns slays The Undertaker. This was his swan song, as evidenced by the ending of the show. Roman Reigns just walks down the aisle. He just stares at The Undertaker. And then Undertaker takes off his wrestling attire, places all of them in the middle of the ring, and this kind of signifies that this indeed is the final match of The Undertaker. Even judging by The Undertaker going to the crowd and kissing Michelle McCool, his wife, match was pretty sloppy, and there was definitely emotional investment from the crowd, so I guess that kind of makes up for it. So I'm not going to be one of those guys to go online and petition Undertaker and reverse the decision and make Undertaker go over Roman Reigns, because I think it's completely ridiculous. I mean, there's just more going on in society that we should be more concerned about than just a TV show, really. I mean, I'm not going to bash Roman Reigns. I'm not going to, go on a tangent about him. But as far as The Undertaker, I mean, definitely one of my favorite wrestlers and very influential over the past 27 years that he's been a part of WWE and a part of the wrestling business in general. And Undertaker's just definitely been loyal to the company, even through the ups and downs, even when some of the top tier wrestlers left to go to another wrestling promotion, especially if it was something like WCW. But Undertaker managed to stay with the WWE as long as he did, and he hasn't left the company since. Whether you like the wrestler, whether you not like it, you just gotta respect the guy for going out there and busting his ass out and going back and forth, traveling on the road. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of commitment, and Undertaker did just that. And I guess might as well mention a quick analysis or thoughts about the mixed tag team match between John Cena and Nikki Bella against The Miz and Maryse, which didn't go on for very long. I would expect a John Cena match to go at least reasonably 10 minutes, maybe. I mean, it's maybe not be that long, but Miz just dissing John Cena and just trading verbal assaults on him and his girlfriend Nikki Bella. The crowd was booing over Cena and cheering on The Miz. John Cena and Nikki Bella demolished Miz and Maryse, and basically after that, Cena proposes to Nikki Bella, "Will you marry me?" And Nikki Bella nods her head, and I mean, the crowd was just so against Cena, which I guess it's expected. I mean, considering the past several years that John Cena has been on top of the food chain in the WWE. So I was expecting Nikki Bella to say no, just for comic relief, but even though that would probably be a bit of a downer. And it was definitely a split crowd. Like the guys were like, "Don't," yes, like don't like Nikki, like we're assisting Nikki not to propose to Cena, and one part of the crowds were like really going forth with the proposal. So I thought that was actually pretty funny there. WrestleMania 33, really enjoyed this show overall. Definitely thought this was a step up from last year. And I think that's really about it for this video. So thank you guys for watching. What were some of your favorite matches? Leave down your comments below. What were some of your favorite moments as well? And yeah, thank you all guys for watching.